Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our seminar tonight, Next Steps Preparing for the Transition to Adult Services. Tonight, what we're going to do is we're going to be going through a number of different questions that have already been submitted, talking about what we can learn for folks who are in that transition age. Our experts here tonight are Stephanie Lynch, the Director of Transitions for JCPS, Janelle Petrosky from OVR, and LaShante Thomas, who is the Director of the Accessibility Center at JCTC. So we're going to start with JCPS. Stephanie Lynch.
Hi, guys. Thanks for joining us tonight. Kitty, are you going to read the questions or should I read the questions and respond?
No, I'll read them.
Okay.
And our first question is, what grade should transition planning start in the schools?
Okay, so in the schools, for students that are on IEPs, we start transition documentation in the IEP in 8th grade or age 14, whichever happens first. Or it could be started sooner if the ARC team decides that transition discussion needs to be started sooner and documented in the IEP. However, we do start career development and exploration in 6th grade for all students, regardless if they have an IEP or not. They start with an individual learning plan, which explores different careers and lets students starting in the 6th grade choose like careers that might seem interesting to them. And those are documented in that ILP, which is different from the IEP. So we do start as early as 6th grade, but we start documenting on the IEP in 8th grade.
And how do folks find out about transition plans in the individual districts? What if they're not in JCPS? Is it the same everywhere?
No, it's different depending on what your district offers. I would reach out to the teacher first and say if it's a middle school teacher, they may not know about the transition programs and services that are offered because those often do happen in high school. So they may reach out to their ARC chairperson, which every school has one of those. And if the ARC chairperson is not sure, there should be someone on the district level that can speak on the behalf of transition.
Perfect. Great. Now, where can folks find out more about the agencies that provide support services and employment services?
Well, they can find out and ask those questions at an ARC meeting, or JCPS is offering 2 different types of transition fairs. One will be around employment and another one that will be around service providers that provide like Medicaid type services by accessing those Kentucky Medicaid waivers like the Michelle P. waiver or the home and community-based waiver. So we do have 2 in-person transition fairs coming up, and I'm going to link the flyers for both of those in our chat.
That'd be great.
Yeah, so you can share those with families, but we really are gearing these towards our JCPS families. However, we won't turn away anyone that comes from an outside county.
All right, well, thank you. Okay, now, how do you apply for OVR services if you're in high school?
Okay, so our ARC chair people, they're really familiar with OVR. We have various counselors assigned to specific schools. So that will vary from school to school who your OVR designee will be. typically during the last year or two, they will complete a referral to the Office of Oak Rehab. And that will be given to them at the ARC meeting. And it's really up to the family to do that. So it's very important to get that paperwork in so that those students can transition onto OVR services after they graduate.
What if they don't have that right now?
If they don't have, if they're graduating and they don't do the paperwork, but then like a year later, they decide, oh, I remember at our IEP meeting having that discussion about OVR. They can reach out to any local OVR agency. We have many different offices in Louisville. And typically those are decided based on the zip code where you live, and those OVR counselors are assigned that way. But Janelle can probably speak on that behalf.
Okay, great. Now, does JCPS offer any financial resources to help students with financial aid for students with disabilities? Is there anything that's particularly set aside for them?
With in high school,
Mm-hmm.
well, would they apply for college?
Mm-hmm.
Like with JCTC, they have a lot going on right now as far as financial aid. So
Yes.
we have community partners that are working with JCTC to get that information out to students. But like as far as JCPS funding high school or funding college, we don't necessarily have like money that goes towards that, but JCTC has some really, really cool
Yes, and
things
we're going
going
to hear
on.
about some of those in just a minute. So,
Yes.
okay, all right. Well, thank you so much, Stephanie.
All right, and I'm going to link those flyers in the chat.
Oh, that would be wonderful. Folks, if you have a question specifically for Stephanie, you can put that in the chat as well. And then we'll circle back and go through questions at the end of the presentations. Next up, Janelle Petrosky from OVR is going to talk about how students get started with OVR. We've heard from Stephanie already, and Stephanie has told us that there's a referral form that they fill out in high school. So Janelle, let's take it from there.
Okay, so typically most of the schools will have copies of our referral forms that they can give to the students. I personally do not cover Jefferson County, the other counselors do, but for my counties, the way I typically do it is I give my referral packets to our job coaches in the counties and the schools that I assigned to. They will have the releases that they need for the kids to sign or the parents to sign, depending on their age, and the referral packets that they got to fill out. Sometimes it depends specifically on the school's job coach. Some of them, they do just give them the packets and then the kids or the families get back to us. Other ones, I have one school particular, she will hunt them down and make them sign it right there. So it just depends on the school sometimes too. Yeah, so
every school is a little bit different.
Yeah.
We did have a question in the chat, and it never occurred to me, but what happens if someone's homeschooling?
That's a great question. So they can apply pretty much like they would if the kids were already out of school. They could just contact their local office. So for Jefferson County, it's going to be, and I'll put our website in the chat as well so they can access it, and it has all the locations listed on it. They would just call that office and tell them they want to make a referral, and they'll assign them to the counselor in their area.
And it'll go by either the zip code or the county.
Yeah, it goes by zip code.
Okay, all right. Now, can you talk to me a little bit about pre-ETS and what is that and how does that work?
Yeah, so pre-ETS, it stands for pre-employment transition services. So it's basically all kinds of fantastic trainings that kids can do. And I have some adults that do it too, to learn just all these different skills they need to learn to be able to work in the field. So it's like job exploration. So, I mean, most teenagers, they have no idea what they want to do. So this will teach them what they want to do. In my county, some of the job coaches or employment specialists out there will actually take them into the community, showing them what jobs they can do, especially because obviously the rural counties, they are more limited on where they could work if they want to stay in their county. They can do work-based learning experiences, where it's like a hands-on job experience, but not necessarily. Some of them it'll be an actual job, some of them it's more volunteering, so they just kind of learn how to do the jobs. And then it's there's counseling, workplace readiness training, and then a big one, I think, especially with our kiddos, is the self-advocacy, teaching them how to self-advocate for themselves, because once they're in the field, in the beginning, we can help them with making sure employers are giving them the accommodations they are entitled to. After that, they got to learn to ask for, and they got to make sure they're giving it to them. So that's what they're taught on how to do that.
So with those kind of services, they can get them in high school, but then can they also get them after high school?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So,
Well, it sounds like those are services that almost everybody needs, especially any
Yeah.
teenagers.
mm-hmm.
Because teenagers traditionally need some guidance when it comes to the job market. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Can you talk about some of the services that OVR has?
Okay. So for OVR, we can help with lots of stuff. So we are helping with vocational counseling and guidance on what they want to do. We can set them up for vocational assessments. So it's an assessment that will look at, it's kind of like a placement test in high school, but it's so much more elaborate. So it's looks at their diagnosis, things that they like to do, things that they're good at, and then it'll give them a whole list of careers that they would be good at doing. Then we could do post-secondary training assistance. There's the rehab technology, which they're the department that got all the fun toys. So this is all the techie stuff that kids need. I have a couple kiddos that are nonverbal, and they have the tablets that help talk for them, stuff like that. Even as basic as getting hearing aids or devices that will like record classrooms if they have trouble taking notes and listening, like just all kinds. I mean, it's the list of things that the rehab tech can, or the rehab technology can do it's pretty vast. So there's that. Job searching assistance, of course, support employment. With support employment, it's typically a vendor we send them out to refer them to, and they help them find the jobs. They help them doing their resume. They'll help them with interviewing skills. They help them on the job, making sure they're getting, like I said, like the accommodations that they need. They'll give them long-term support. So even if they close with us, a lot of times those vendors will stay open with them to make sure that the job is going well and they don't need anything put in place. And then employment follow-up. So we check in with them regularly to make sure everything's going good. There's not any issues, what they need help with, that kind of thing.
Okay. All right. Now, so does OVR actually contribute funds towards college?
They do. So it's not 100%. It's depends on, so currently right now, if they are full-time students, it's around $2,000 towards a semester and $500 towards books, as long as they're full-time.
Oh,
If they
wow.
want to be part-time, they have to have some kind of a note, like from a therapist or a counselor, explaining why they want to be part-time or why they need to be part-time. That amount can change depending on when they do our budget at the end of the fiscal year, which is typically we know our new budget that in July. So
Yes.
but yeah, they do. If a child is autistic and they get into the Kelly Autism Center, we pay 100% of it.
What
is pretty
was
cool.
that? What
The
was
Kelly
the
Autism Center. Yeah, they are associated with I think WKU. Yeah. And from what I understand, I don't know a whole lot about the Kelly Autism Center, but from what I understand, they only have so many spots open. So it's not easy to get into.
Well, speaking of places that they might go off to school at, can you talk about the Carl Perkins Training Center?
Oh, yeah. Carl Perkins is great. I haven't got to tour it myself yet because I started back in the fall and they were closed down because of COVID. They are now
Yes.
open back up. They do so many things. So they are an extension of us. So we pay 100% of that. They are kind of like Job Corps in a way. So they have different kinds of trades that they can go and get a certificate, like an official certificate for. They would stay at the center for the length of time that their program is for. It just depends on which one they enlist in. It can be 12 weeks, it could be 6 weeks. It just depends on the program. And then they teach them different skills while they're there. They can do independent living skills. They do vocational training skills, life skills, psychological services. They can help them with getting their permit. They can help them with driver training. If they didn't finish high school and they want to get their GED, they can help them with that. And they can do like behavioral intervention supports.
So that's a whole lot of things. Now, where are they located? They're not in Louisville.
They are not. And oh goodness, now I kind of drawn a blank on that one. Let me look. They're a little further away. They are about 4 hours from Louisville.
Okay.
Let's see. And let's see, they're in Prestonburg, Kentucky.
Oh, okay. All right.
Where that is, I'm not 100% sure because I'm not from Louisville. Or I'm not from Kentucky. So.
It's off to the east. Okay. All right. Okay. So how do people qualify for these services? What do you have to do to qualify?
Okay. So for vocational rehab services, you have to have a permanent disability or diagnosis.
Okay.
So the process is that they would send in the referral that they want to have services. They would do an intake appointment with a counselor and they would help them fill out the application. And the counselor they have up to 60 days to determine their eligibility. And it's getting documentation from doctors showing that they have an official diagnosis. And that's hindering them from obtaining and maintaining employment.
Okay. I know you mentioned the Carl Perkins does the driver's trainings. Is there anywhere around here that does that?
So with OVR, we have driver training. There's a process to it. They have to qualify for it. They have to get doctor's notes and have a certain I'm trying to remember how she worded it. It was just, there's different steps to it, but for the most part, we can help with the driving part to get their license, but they have to have their permit already. We don't help with the permit part that way within the Perkins. But the advantage with Carl D. Perkins to do the permit is it is online.
Oh, okay.
So it's just, there's just a process to it, but they can do it with us.
All right. Well, I mean, it's that having a driver's license is a really important part of independence and employment as well. So that's something that especially teenagers are very interested in hearing more about. Okay. All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I may come back to you with some more questions. I'm going to switch over to LaShante now and talk a little bit about what do you do if you want to go to JCTC? JCTC has, as Stephanie was alluding to, some excellent programs going on right now with some financial aid and working with JCPS. And so I guess, LaShante, the first question I have for you is, how does somebody get started if they're interested in JCTC?
So if a student is interested in JCTC or Jefferson, first they need to apply to Jefferson. after they have been accepted into Jefferson, if they are interested in accommodations or need accommodations for their classes, the first step is for them to submit or self-disclose their disability. So they'll have to go online and submit an electronic request form for ARC services. And ARC stands for the Accessibility Resource Center. And within that application or form, a student must disclose their location or their campus location, their disability, the type of accommodations they prefer. They need to sign an authorization to release form and then also upload their medical documentation. When the ARC receive that information, an ARC coordinator will reach out to a student to schedule an appointment. If a student has difficulty with submitting that application, they can always come to the downtown campus, which is located at 109 East Broadway, and come to the Chestnut Hall, and we are located in 319 of Chestnut Hall, and a student can come in and submit a request for services in person.
Okay, now, so the college doesn't follow the IEP from high school.
No, an IEP does not follow a student into high school. However, if a student needs accommodations, the ARC department will use it as a starting point for documentation purposes. But if it does not have enough information, then we will inform the student that they need to provide additional documentation.
So they might need to provide documentation on things such as their disability.
That's correct. Their disability, functional limitations, testing instruments used, and the recommended accommodations. And documentation needs to be current. So it has to be from 16 years of age or older. So really, we prefer to have documentation as an adult. So from 16 years of older, the testing instruments are used for adults. So that's the type of accommodations or the documentation we will need. However, if we have like a dual credit student applying for services, or maybe a freshman first-time student, we will accept an IEP as a starting point.
Now, so how often does someone need to submit that documentation?
Just doing the initial intake. So whenever they apply for services, a student just needs to upload that information or email it to the ARC. However, if a student has new information pertaining to their disability, then they will need to provide that information. But they only need to submit documentation once. And then from there, the ARC will automatically send out accommodation letters each semester.
So it sounds like the student is the one responsible for providing that documentation.
That's correct. Mm-hmm.
What happens if they don't have it?
If they don't have it, they can always talk to, they can still submit a request, and we'll just help them through the process, and we will discuss with the student what their limitations are. And then from there, we may, depending on the conversation, we can discuss whether or not we can approve provisional or temporary accommodations.
So you guys might refer them out to somebody too.
Right.
Give them some idea on where to go.
Right. We usually refer them to the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation or Spalding University for documentation. Okay. And Spalding University, they have a Center for Behavioral Health, and they can also assist.
So the services might be the same that they had in high school.
Some of the services might be the same, but certain accommodations that a student received in high school may not transfer over to the college level. For example, repeating a work or an exam is not an accommodation that can be approved at the college level. However, that's at the discretion of the professor. So certain accommodations listed in the IEP will not transfer over to the college level.
One of the things I forgot to ask at first is, can you explain what Jefferson's open admission policy means?
That just means that students, they just need to meet the criteria for admissions. So even though they have a disability, they still need to meet that criteria. For example, they still need to meet that testing criteria or certain GPA percentages or scores. They still have to meet that criteria. However, students with disabilities can take testings with the accommodations. So if they need to take a placement exam, they can take that with accommodations.
So Jefferson accepts the students who apply, but then they go through an assessment process to determine their eligibility for college level classes.
That's correct. That's correct. So that they can either use the placement test for placement in certain classes. I know during COVID, they were using the GPA. I'm not sure if they're still using that at this point, but during COVID, like the height of COVID, they were using the GPA for placement into certain classes.
And so what is the parents' role in this process?
There's really no parents' role in the process. At the college level, we really prefer for students to do things on their own, to self-advocate on their own. However, if a student wants their parents involved, they need to sign an authorization to release form. And that's just due to the FERPA Act, which is the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. So if a student wants to have their parents involved with the ARC, they'll just need to sign an authorization to release form and the parents can sit in. However, even with an authorization to release form, there's just certain information we still cannot give out, such as grades or class information.
Even if they authorize a release?
Right. So the student, they will have to be the individual to provide that information. We cannot give out grade information or class information.
So it's very different in high school. Well, so you did mention with the pandemic, there had been some changes as far as the assessment test and looking at the GPA for admissions. Are there any other changes with the pandemic that people need to be aware of?
I would just like to let everyone know that the ARC, we will assist students over the telephone. So if a student can't meet in person or virtually, we can also meet through the telephone, but we just need to verify certain information. We can also meet virtually through Microsoft Teams and also in person if a student prefers to be seen in person.
That's very convenient. Now, you would also mention services were available at campuses. Can you talk a little bit about the different campuses?
Yeah, so at Jefferson, we have 6 campuses. We have the downtown campus, the technical campus, the Bullitt campus, the Shelby campus, and the Carrollton campus, and the Southwest campus. So we have 6 campuses and we service all campuses. So if a student needs accommodations and their location is within one of those campuses, the ARC here at the downtown campus will service that student. However, within the JCTCS system, there are 16 campuses or 16 colleges, and each college have their own accessibility resource center, and they have their own requirements for documentation for accommodations.
So where does a student need to go for more information?
They can go to our website. I'm going to drop that in the chat, which is jctc.me/ARC. A student or just an individual, if they want to know more information about the ARC, they can go to that website and get more information. I'm also going to put another link in the chat with scholarship information.
Oh, yes, that was something I wanted to ask a little bit about. I've heard that all JCPS students are eligible, or some?
Well, for I believe it's the 502 or the
Yes, that's
Evolve
it.
502 scholarship,
Yes.
JCPS grads, they are eligible. I believe they are eligible for that, but they need to apply. I can also put a link in the chat for direct information for the Evolve 502 information.
Yes, 'cause that seems like a really good idea too. Let me see if I'm missing anything.
Do you want to say, Kitty, that
Uh-huh.
our students that graduate and are on an IEP, at the end of the year, the ARC chair and the teacher will package nicely all the things that they need to go on to, whether it be supported employment and services with the Office of Oak Rehab, or services if they're going on to college. So they will package their most current IEP and the most recent reevaluation information that we have, which that goes to the psychological assessments that LaShante was talking about that they need for when they apply for college. So that's packaged
Excellent.
nicely together before they graduate and sent home to families.
Okay. So it's not that difficult when a student goes to apply. They apply for the ARC services and then they can upload that information because they already have it.
Or I would guess they would meet with someone in LaShante's office.
And then bring it in and talk to them about their
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. LaShante, anything else that you want to add to that?
I do want to add that if a student has been approved for accommodations within the ARC, there is an AHEAD scholarship. So that's available for students who have been approved for accommodations. And that's $500.
So the student could get the Evolve scholarship and then that scholarship and then maybe work with VR. They might be in have some real support there to help them be successful as they move on in their transition planning.
And then I also want to talk about some of the accommodations or assistive technology that we do have in the ARC.
Yes, definitely.
So we do have JAWS, which is a screen reader, Zoom text, a magnifier, and then we have some talking calculators, some digital recorders for students who require or need to audio record lectures. And then we have Kurzweil, which is a rating system, which can use in conjunction with digital books or electronic books. So those are just some of the things that we have. And we also have a Braille embosser.
Now, are your classes virtual or in person?
Classes are online or virtual. Sorry, are online or on the campus.
I didn't know with the pandemic if everyone was back in person.
Yes, everyone is back in person now, but there is an options for virtual or online classes.
And online classes can use the accessibility services as well?
That's correct, yes.
Right, I'm looking in the chat room for questions. If someone has, I'd like to, Janelle, do you have anything you would like to add right now?
I don't believe so.
Okay, all right. I'd like to open up the floor for our participants. If they have some specific questions for our panelists, we would welcome their questions. We'd be happy to help them any way we can.
This is Marie Carney. I don't have access to the chat box because I've logged in through a corporate Zoom, but I didn't really have a question so much as just to say thank you to all of you who put this together. And I know that JCPS is having another informational meeting, I think at the main library next Monday evening. And I plan to attend that in person, but I just want to thank you all for all your information tonight.
Great, we'll see you there.
I'll be there.
Wonderful. Okay, now don't forget, if you do have access to the chat, you can go ahead and copy those links down. If you don't have access to the chat, we can send that out to you. We can copy them and send those links out to you because there's some great links for the information that our presenters have talked about tonight. Do we have any other questions tonight? If we don't, I'll go ahead and kind of close us out for the evening. I do appreciate all of our panelists for being here tonight. Thanks again to Stephanie Lynch, Janelle Petrosky, and LaShante Thomas. We appreciate them being here and sharing this important information with everyone. Again, thanks to everybody, and we'll see you again some other time. So thanks a lot. Okay.